Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking into the world of color.
Yeah, color.
It's such a fascinating topic.
It really is.
It's one of those things we experience it every single day,
Yeah.
but we don't always stop and think about, all of the ways in which color impacts us and impacts the way we see the world.
Yeah.
And to help me kind of break this down and really dive deep into this, I've got an expert here with me today.
Oh,
And we are going to be taking a look at a paper,
right.
an academic paper that compares and contrasts two very famous artists and their approaches to color.
Yes.
And that is Vincent van Gogh and Gogh Seurat.
Yeah, those are two big names.
So two masters in their own right, but totally different approaches.
Totally different.
So this is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
We think about Van Gogh, obviously we think about his bold brushstrokes and very thick applications of paint and all that.
Sure.
But his color choices were actually very deliberate and subtle. And we're going to be taking a look at some specific examples of how he used color to achieve a very particular effect.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that he was often using a very limited palette.
Yeah.
So even within that constraint, he was able to do so much.
Right. And it kind of speaks to that idea that you don't need every single color in the rainbow
Right.
in order to create something beautiful or to create an effect.
Right.
Whereas Seurat, on the other hand,
Yeah.
he's like the OG pixel artist.
He is. Before computers he was doing.
Yeah, like a century before computers.
Yeah.
He was already kind of thinking in terms of these little dots of pure color.
Right, and his technique is actually called pointillism,
Yeah.
where he uses these tiny dots of pure, unmixed color to build up a picture.
And it's so interesting because when you look at his work from a distance, it looks like a normal painting. Like you see a scene,
Right.
Figures a landscape, whatever it might be.
Yeah, you get the whole picture.
But as you get closer, it starts to dissolve into these dots.
Yeah, and it's almost like he's asking you to engage in this puzzle.
Yes.
Like you have to piece together the image from these dots.
And it really makes you aware of the process of seeing
Yeah.
how our brains are actually constructing what we see.
Right, because when we look at something normally,
Right.
we're not seeing dots.
Yeah.
We're seeing a whole image.
Right.
But he's sort of breaking that down.
Right.
And then asking our brains to put it back together
Yeah.
again.
And there's this great quote from the book Suspensions of Perception by Jonathan Crary.
Yes.
Where he talks about how Seurat's work reveals that the, quote, apprehension of an image occurs over time and not as part of a functional or fixed set of relations.
That's a mouthful.
And that our perception is
Right.
actually a process consisting of distinct physical events, end quote.
I love that.
So it's
So profound.
he's really getting at that idea that we're not just passively observing the world.
Yeah, we're actively constructing it.
Yeah. We are constructing our reality.
Yeah,
And I think that's so fascinating.
I agree.
And I think it's a good place to maybe look at a specific example
Sure.
of one of Seurat's paintings. And maybe we can kind of break down
Absolutely.
how this actually works in practice.
Yeah, so how about we look at his painting, La Parade de Cirque,
Okay.
from 1888.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
All right, so what do you see
Well,
when you first look at it?
yeah, just from a distance, it's a circus scene.
Yeah.
You've got performers on a stage. You've got an audience. You've got, kind of all the hustle and bustle and energy
The lights,
of a circus performance.
the music.
Yeah.
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 Exactly, it's lively.
Yeah.
But now let's zoom in a little bit,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah.
And look at how that image is constructed.
Okay.
What do you see?
Yeah. I mean, I'm seeing all those little dots.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting how he carefully placed
Yeah.
certain colors next to each other. Sometimes it's very harmonious,
Yeah.
and sometimes it feels kind of jarring.
Almost clashing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's deliberate.
Oh, wow.
He's using color to create both harmony and disharmony
Okay.
within the same image.
Yeah, I'm really seeing it now. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and this is where it gets into this idea of Gestalt quality.
Oh, okay. What is that?
So Gestalt quality refers to a set of principles that explain how our brains perceive and organize visual information.
Okay.
So our minds are wired to group things together,
Right.
find patterns,
Yeah.
create order out of chaos.
Right. We want to make sense of things.
Exactly. And Seurat is really playing with those principles in a clever way.
So how does this play out in La Parade?
Okay, well, let's take a look at the musicians on the left side of the painting.
Okay.
Do you see them?
Yeah, I see them.
Okay, now notice how they're outlined by these vibrant orange dots.
Yeah.
but the background also contains patches of orange.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see that.
So what he's doing is he's creating this push-pull effect
Okay.
where the musicians simultaneously stand out and blend in.
Yeah, it's like they're both part of the background, but they're also separate from it.
Exactly, and that creates a kind of visual tension.
Yeah, and it's making me question, like, where does the figure end and the background begin?
Right, it's playing with our expectations.
And you know what's so funny is that we do this all the time in everyday life,
We do.
right? Like, we're constantly noticing patterns and contrast, trying to make sense of the world around us. But Seurat just brings it to the forefront.
Yeah.
He's making us consciously aware
Exactly.
of that process.
Consciously aware.
And it's all through the use of color.
Yeah, and what's even more remarkable is that he achieves this not through blended colors,
Right.
like most artists of his time, but through this like meticulously constructed array of distinct dots.
Right.
And this is what makes his work so revolutionary.
Yeah.
Because it provides this bridge to understanding how digital imagery works today. Like, think about it. Those dots are essentially like pixels,
Yeah.
the building blocks of digital images.
It's like he anticipated the digital age.
He did, in a way.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's mind-blowing.
right.
Okay, so we've talked about Seurat and his like very bold and almost jarring use of color.
Right.
But let's shift gears now and talk
Definitely.
about Van Gogh,
Okay.
who, as we said, took a very different approach.
Yeah, much more unified.
Yeah, and it's almost like he was going for something more,
Spiritual.
yeah, almost spiritual.
Yeah.
And to kind of understand this better, we need to actually look beyond Western art traditions
Okay.
and consider the influence of Eastern art,
Oh, interesting.
particularly from China and Japan,
Yeah.
because centuries before, Van Gogh artists in these cultures were already exploring this idea of nature's inherent wholeness
Hmm.
through their use of color.
Yeah.
And they often employed a technique known as monochromatic,
Right.
where you're using colors that are very close together
Yeah, on the color spectrum.
on the
Yeah.
to create a sense of harmony and unity.
Right.
So are you saying that Van Gogh was like influenced by these Eastern art traditions?
What we can't say for certain,
Right.
but there is evidence to suggest that he was aware of and inspired by Japanese art,
Okay.
particularly ukiyo-e woodblock prints.
Oh, yeah.
He even collected them and incorporated elements of their style into his own work.
Wow.
So it's fascinating to see how these ancient ideas about nature's interconnectedness
Yeah,
might have found their way into his paintings.
that is so cool. I love that connection.
Yeah.
And I'm looking right now at his painting Autumn Landscape with 4 trees from 1885.
Yeah, a classic.
And I can definitely see what you mean about the limited color palette. It's mostly browns, muted greens,
Yeah.
kind of a grayish white sky.
Yep. And it creates this...
Yeah, it just feels very
Sort of
calm and unified, like
Uh-huh.
everything is connected.
Exactly.
And what's remarkable is that even within this limited palette,
Right.
he still manages to create depth and distinction.
Yeah, and this goes back to that quote from the source we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
where it says that he used color, quote, for decorative purposes rather than descriptive purposes, end quote.
Right. I remember that.
So how do you think that plays out in this painting?
So I guess the question is like, what does it mean to use color decoratively
Yeah.
as opposed to descriptively?
Right. So look closely at the brushstrokes.
Yeah.
How is he using the brushstrokes to depict different elements of the landscape?
Yeah, I see that like the grass is all these vertical strokes,
Huh?
and then the foreground is like these horizontal strokes,
Mm-hmm.
and even the sky has like these kind of swirling strokes.
Yeah.
It's like he's using the brush strokes and the texture
Yeah.
to differentiate the
Even
element.
when the colors are very similar.
Yeah.
So he's creating a sense of depth and movement
Yeah.
through the brushstrokes.
It's so subtle, but it's so effective.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's incredible. Right.
Yeah, so it's like we have Seurat who's challenging us to actively construct the image with all those dots.
Right.
And then we have Van Gogh who's using this limited palette and these brush strokes
Yeah.
to create a sense of unity.
Unity and almost like an emotional connection.
Emotional connection, exactly.
Yeah.
2 completely different approaches, both incredibly powerful
Yeah.
and revealing in their own way.
Yeah. And what I think is so interesting is that both of them are tapping into the way our brains perceive color
Exactly.
and process visual information.
Yeah, we're going to dive deeper into that in the next part.
Oh, this is going to be good.
It is. All right, well, stay tuned.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
Welcome back to our deep dive all about color.
We're picking up right where we left off with Van Gogh and Seurat.
Yeah, and we were talking about how they both kind of intuitively tapped into the way our brains actually process visual information.
Right, like how we see color.
Yeah, and I think this is where things get really interesting because now we're getting into the science of color perception.
Yeah, it's a whole other level.
So how does it actually work?
Well, it all starts with light.
Okay.
When light hits an object, certain wavelengths are absorbed
Mm-hmm.
and others are reflected, and those reflected wavelengths
Okay.
are what our eyes perceive as color.
Okay, so it's like bouncing off.
It is bouncing off, yeah, and those wavelengths that bounce back,
Right.
those are the colors we see.
Okay, but it's not just like a passive process.
No, it's
That's-
not passive at all.
Like our brains are doing something.
Our brains are very active
Okay.
in interpreting those signals and actually creating the colors we see.
So it's not just the physical properties of the light, it's also about how our brains.
Absolutely. It's
So all your stuff.
interpretation. Okay, so that kind of explains like how we see color, but what about like the emotions that we associate with different colors?
Mm-hmm.
Like why does red, for example, often feel energizing?
Right. Or why can blue feel calming?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it gets into color psychology.
Okay.
There's a lot of research that suggests different wavelengths of light
Okay.
actually stimulate different parts of the brain.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Different parts of the brain respond to different wavelengths,
Okay.
which can then trigger hormonal responses
Whoa.
and influence our mood, emotions, and even behavior.
So you're saying there's like a biological basis?
There
is
is.
how we react to color.
There is a biological basis.
Not just like cultural or subjective.
Well, there's a cultural element,
Uh-huh.
of course,
Sure.
but the foundation
Yeah.
is biological.
Okay, so like give me an example.
Okay, so for example, studies have shown that exposure to red light
Okay.
can increase heart rate and respiration,
Oh, wow.
which triggers a physiological response associated with alertness
Okay.
and excitement.
That makes sense.
Right. So think about that.
Yeah.
Red light,
Yeah.
heart rate goes up,
Yeah.
respiration increases. You're more alert.
Okay. I'm starting to get it.
Blue light, on the other hand, has shown to have a calming effect,
Interesting.
even lowering blood pressure.
Okay, so it's almost like the opposite.
It's almost like the opposite, yeah.
Wow. Okay, so we're literally wired
We are wired.
to respond to color
Yeah.
on a very fundamental level.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, so how does all of this connect back to like Seurat and Van Gogh?
Mm.
I mean, they weren't scientists, they were artists.
Right, but they were intuitively tapping into these principles
Okay.
through their artistic choices.
Okay, I'm listening.
So remember how Seurat used those contrasting colors
Uh-huh.
to create that visual tension in La Parade?
Yeah, yeah.
That tension, that heightened sense of awareness,
Yeah.
is partly due to how our brains process.
Oh, okay.
There's contrasting wavelengths of light.
So he was like playing with our biology.
He was playing with our biology.
Almost like a composer, you know?
Yes, like a visual composer.
Creating a symphony
Symphony of color.
of color and light.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And what about Van Gogh then? How does his use of monochromatic color palettes
Yeah.
fit into all of this?
Well, his approach is more about creating a sense of unity and harmony,
Okay.
both within the painting and in the viewer's experience.
Okay.
So by using colors that are close together on the spectrum,
Uh-huh.
he's minimizing that visual noise
Right.
and allowing our brains to kind of relax and process the image in a more unified way.
Okay, so it's like Seurat's stimulating our visual cortex.
Yeah.
With all those like contrasting colors.
Right, high contrast.
And Van Gogh is like offering a more meditative
yeah, more meditative.
experience.
Yeah,
Wow, that's such a cool insight.
I think so too.
Okay, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around like how this relates to my everyday life.
Right.
I mean, I'm not surrounded by Seurat paintings
Right.
or Van Gogh landscapes, you know?
Right.
So how does all this color science actually impact me?
Well, it's more pervasive than you might realize.
Yeah.
Think about how color is used in advertising, for example.
Okay.
Like fast food restaurants.
Uh-huh.
They often use bright, stimulating colors like red and yellow.
Right.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, it makes you feel hungry, right?
Yeah.
Like it triggers some kind of primal urge to eat.
Exactly. They're tapping into those biological responses
Oh, wow.
we were talking about.
So it's not just me being hungry.
Not just you.
It's the colors.
It's the colors, too.
Oh, man.
Red and yellow are associated with energy, excitement, and even urgency.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay.
So they grab your attention
Okay.
and make you feel more impulsive.
So next time I'm craving a burger, I'll know it's not just my stomach talking.
It's not just your stomach.
It's the colors.
It's those colors.
Oh, man. Okay, so it's not just fast food, though, right?
No, it's everywhere.
Like where else?
Think about hospitals,
Okay.
healthcare facilities.
Mhm.
They often use cool, calming colors like blue and green.
Right.
Why do you think that is?
Well, if red is like stimulating and exciting, maybe blue and green are meant to create like a sense of peace and tranquility
Exact.
to help patients feel more relaxed.
Yeah, less anxious.
Feel less anxious, yeah.
Precisely. And there's even research to suggest that these colors can actually lower blood pressure and reduce
Wow.
stress levels.
So they're like unknowingly
They
harnessing
are.
the power of color
They are harnessing the power of color.
to create a more healing environment.
Exactly.
It's like color is the secret language
It is a secret language.
that's constantly influencing us,
all the time,
even when we don't realize it.
even when we're not aware of it.
Okay, so I'm convinced now color is way more powerful
It is powerful.
than I ever realized.
Yeah.
But what can I do with this knowledge?
Right.
How can I use it to my advantage?
That's a great question, and something we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive,
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into color.
where we've been exploring the amazing ways in which color shapes our perceptions, emotions, even behaviors.
Yeah, and now it's time to kind of like give our listeners some tools
Yes.
to actually take control of this newfound knowledge.
Right. Not just see color,
Right.
but understand its language
Yeah.
and leverage its power.
Okay, so let's get practical. What can our listeners actually do?
Okay, well, first, I think the most crucial step is to cultivate awareness.
Yeah. Okay.
Start paying attention to color
Okay.
in a way you haven't before. Don't just passively absorb it.
So it's about like actively observing how color is used in different contexts and how it makes us feel.
Exactly. Like begin with your immediate surroundings.
Okay.
Look at the colors in your home, your workspace, the clothes you wear.
Like take a color inventory of your life.
Yeah, color inventory. I love that.
Yeah.
And ask yourself, what emotions do these colors evoke?
Okay.
Do they align with the mood or atmosphere you want to create?
Interesting.
For instance, if you find yourself constantly stressed in your home office,
Right.
maybe those bright red walls aren't helping.
You're saying I should repaint.
Well, it's something to consider. Even small changes can make a difference.
Okay.
Maybe swap out that red desk lamp for a calming blue one.
Okay.
Experiment. See how it impacts your mood and productivity.
I like that. So we start by becoming more aware of the colors we surround ourselves with.
Yes. And then
Okay.
expand your awareness to the outside world.
Okay.
Pay attention to how color is used in advertising, marketing, design.
Right.
Notice how different brands use color to target specific emotions
Right.
and influence consumer behavior,
Like we were talking about before about fast food restaurants using red and yellow
right?
to stimulate those feelings of hunger and urgency.
Exactly. And it works.
Right.
But now that you're aware of it,
Yeah.
you can be a more conscious consumer.
Okay.
You can recognize when those colors are being used to manipulate your emotions
Right.
and make choices you might not otherwise make.
So it's about taking back control,
Yes, taking back control.
not letting those marketers like push our buttons.
Exactly. And once you start noticing these patterns,
Hmm.
you'll be amazed at how pervasive color is
Okay.
in shaping our perceptions. Think about how color is used in movie posters, book covers, even political campaigns.
It's like a whole new world is opening up.
It is a whole new world.
Right.
And you can also use this knowledge to your advantage.
Okay.
In your personal life, feeling stressed, surround yourself with calming blues and greens.
Okay.
Need a boost of energy? Introduce some pops of red or orange.
Like choosing your own personal color soundtrack for the day.
I love that. And don't forget the power of nature.
Oh, yeah.
Spend time outdoors, observing the subtle variations of color in a flower petal,
Right.
a sunset, a forest.
It's like a free therapy session.
It is a free therapy session. Immersing yourself in nature's palette can have a profound impact
Yeah.
on your mood and well-being.
So we've gone from decoding the dots in Seurat's paintings to like hacking our own brains with color.
We have.
It's pretty amazing.
It is amazing.
It's empowering to realize that we have this agency, this ability to understand and leverage the power of color.
And remember, it's a journey. The
Right.
more you pay attention, the more you experiment.
Yeah.
The more fluent you'll become in the language of color.
So to wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a challenge. Pay closer attention to color in your life this week.
Yes.
Notice how it makes you feel, how it's used to influence you, and how you can use it to create the experiences you want.
Embrace the power of color. It's a gift
Yeah.
that enriches our lives in countless ways.
Well, this has been such a fascinating conversation.
It has.
I feel like I've learned so much
Thank you.
about color, and I hope our listeners have too.
I hope so.
So thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the world of color perception and the two artists who saw things differently.
It's been a pleasure.
And to our listeners, until next time, keep exploring the world with open eyes.
And a colorful perspective.
Yeah.